Everyone probably had or has such a friend who always gets into some kind of trouble and at the same time does strange things. If not, then you are very unlucky. I can't call myself lucky because I had to face a terrible thing called divorce, but I admit honestly it was cool and now I have something to remember. Nearly everyone you encounter in life possesses a unique quality that sets them apart. The privileged may boast attributes like wealth, athletic prowess, intelligence, or appealing looks, which serve as advantageous tools in navigating their lives and surpassing competition. Conversely, those less fortunate often find their distinctive qualities serving as cautionary tales about life's hardships. My friend John, however, possesses his own distinctive traits that distinguish him from ordinary individuals, namely mayhem and destruction. He embodies the chaos depicted in Allstate mayhem commercials. If there's a way to turn something sweet and wholesome into a catastrophic disaster, John has likely done it. Bearing the scars as evidence, he acts as a human wrecking ball, not in the quirky Miley Cyrus manner, but in a "I can't believe he's still alive and not incarcerated" fashion. He earned nicknames like John Spartan and the Demolition Man for consistently pushing the boundaries of socially acceptable behavior and wreaking havoc. If there's a method to completely obliterate something, rest assured John has figured it out and given it a try. In essence, he's a great companion to have as long as you manage to stay on his good side. I married Jenna Phoenix 3 years after graduating from college. She was incredibly attractive with an impressive physique, which made it easy to understand why I was so infatuated that I failed to see through her deceptive behavior. Even at the time of our marriage, I was aware that she lacked warmth and compassion, but her physical appearance and sexual prowess compensated for it, at least in the eyes of someone as superficial as me. According to scientific evidence, men can overlook a woman's unfriendly demeanor and negative attitude as long as she arouses him enough to divert blood away from his brain, hindering rational thinking. I could claim that you might be surprised at how frequently this happens to men, but deep down we all know that it's not surprising. Men often think with their impulses until they learn, often through painful experiences, to prioritize either their emotions or rational thoughts. Emotions contribute to great romances, intellect fosters successful marriages, and a aroused libido can lead to substantial legal fees for your attorney. During our dating period, Jenna had met John only once when he was on leave. While she got along relatively well with some of my other friends who were ordinary and not particularly eccentric, John and Jenna's interaction was limited. I attempted to caution her about John, but I knew she didn't fully comprehend it. It was a matter of her smiling and laughing at tales of his antics without truly grasping that they were factual, with minimal exaggeration. Stories can be amusing when they happen to someone else, but they take on a different significance when you find yourself entangled in them. It becomes far less humorous when people start associating you with a grown man-child who's being questioned by the police about his attempts to set up mousetraps at Chuck E. Cheese while proclaiming his intent to vanquish the giant rat once and for all. Or why you can't suddenly take charge of a Walmart checkout counter when you don't actually work there. Most of his escapades were foolish and harmless, but some went too far. Fortunately, our hometown is like many others, so he often escaped legal consequences. It's astonishing what you can get away with when half of your cousins are in the police force, your uncle is the sheriff, and his wife, who also happens to be John's godmother, serves as the judge. Despite the family connection shielding him, they warned him that his pranks were pushing boundaries and needed to stop. When he finally crossed the line, Auntie Judge gave him an ultimatum: either enlist in the army or spend a year in the county jail. His stunt of blast fishing in the reservoir, disrupting the restocking for the fishing derby, particularly angered her since it was one of Auntie Judge and Uncle Sheriff's cherished annual activities. Messing with other people is one thing, but interfering with Auntie Judge's time with her partner was a step too far. So John headed off to honorably serve his country. With John serving in the Army, he spent the majority of his time away from town, resulting in limited interactions with me and, consequently, Jenna. Our communication primarily involved emails and video chats, and I would occasionally send him care packages based on his location in the world. Despite his less-than-stellar intelligence, John managed to maintain decent grades in school. Family connections played a role in keeping his questionable activities off his criminal record, allowing him to enlist as an explosive ordnance disposal (EOD) technician. It's worth noting that entrusting someone with potential mental issues to disarm explosives might not be the wisest decision. During basic training, John successfully concealed his questionable behavior, taking advantage of the diverse group of individuals and the drill sergeant's preoccupation with meeting training requirements. However, his mischievous actions caught up with him halfway through Advanced Individual Training, AIT. He was discovered engaging in inappropriate behavior on an explosive range, constructing a C4 dildo on the day the command sergeant major visited. Perhaps he could have avoided consequences if he hadn't proudly claimed it was modeled after himself, leaving his instructors and the command sergeant major in disbelief. At this juncture, John's instructors acknowledged that his personality was ill-suited for EOD, but they believed they had identified a more fitting role for him in combat engineering. While EOD technicians must demonstrate maturity and seriousness when dealing with bombs, combat engineers, on the other hand, exhibit approximately 80% intelligence, accompanied by a playful 70% recklessness. John discovered his calling in the Army when he recounted his departure from EOD school to his AIT instructors, who had explained his failure to construct certain anatomical parts for his C4 creation. Despite the unconventional nature of his experiences, John felt a sense of belonging, especially when directed to add more explosives to his concrete charges with the rationale of avoiding the inconvenience of returning unused materials. John regularly shared his escapades via email, detailing his mischievous activities that earned him a couple of Article 15s, but fell short of warranting discharge from the Army. Enjoying his time, he eventually decided to return home after completing his 4-year service. During John's time defending freedoms, I was occupied with marrying my ideal partner, Jenna. Our marriage began conventionally, with the intention of establishing ourselves in our careers before delving into parenthood. Navigating the globe was simpler without the concerns of babysitters and ample diaper supplies. Initially, everything was harmonious between Jenna and me. However, a shift occurred, subtle at first but increasingly noticeable towards the end, as she started behaving differently. For weeks this continued. I attempted to discuss the issues I observed in our marriage with her, but she consistently denied any problems, insisting that everything was fine as she carried on with her new routine. This persisted until one day, returning home from work, I found her wedding ring placed on the kitchen table. My efforts to communicate with her yielded the usual cliched excuses, such as, "It's not you, it's me," or "I'm going through some stuff," and a string of apologies. Just fill in the blank for the typical excuses, as she likely used them. The divorce papers were finally served on the afternoon of John's welcome home party. The reasons cited were the standard irreconcilable differences, with what appeared to be an even division. I left the documents on the table and proceeded to the party to welcome my friend home. My marriage had crumbled, and I still couldn't comprehend why. I had missed having John around, and his return meant more to me than I was probably willing to admit to anyone. Despite the deterioration of my marriage, I hadn't yet grasped the exact reasons. While I strongly suspected wrongdoing on her part, I tried to push those thoughts aside for the night. I embraced John warmly upon his arrival, and his immediate reaction was blunt. "What the hell is going on with you?" "It's nothing, don't worry about it. We're here to celebrate your return," I reassured him while handing him a drink. "Happy to have you back, buddy." He gave me a skeptical look. "Yeah, right." Then he cracked a grin. "You're right, it is good to be home." That night, we had a few shots. By a few, I mean we drained the bar dry, and they had to go to the liquor store around the corner for more. Eventually, we got kicked out, and John and I headed to the local fine dining establishment that miraculously stayed open in the middle of the night. All grease, no taste, just perfect. As the party noise faded to the quiet ambiance of the diner, John inquired, "What happened?" "I don't know. Everything was fine. Then things got weird, and she left. I received the divorce papers a few hours before your party. I still don't know what happened." True to form, he cut to the chase. "So, who's she involved with?" I don't know. After contemplating for a brief 4 seconds, John confidently announced, "All right, here's the plan. We mess up her life, then we figure out who he is and mess up his life too." I found myself smiling genuinely for the first time in a while and remarked, "Is it really that straightforward?" "Of course it is. She's gone. No going back to that jerk after what she did. So why waste time crying like a little baby? Even if she tries to come back into your life, would you ever trust her again? Hell no." He had a point about it all. She was gone, and it was time to burn that bridge and move forward. John sported the familiar silly grin I'd seen countless times before and said, "I've got a month of terminal leave, so I've got plenty of time to help with this. You handle the lawyer, I'll take care of the rest." I chuckled. "What exactly are you planning to do? Don't sweat it, bro. I've got it covered." After finishing our meal, we called for a ride back to my place and finally hit the sack. The next morning, around 11 a.m., I woke up to the sound of people talking in the driveway. Looking out the window, I saw my belongings spread across the driveway, with folks rummaging through them. Approaching John, I took a sip of my coffee and inquired about his activities, though the hand-drawn sign proclaiming the cheating slut sale provided a pretty clear answer. "What are you up to?" I asked. "What does it look like? I'm making you some money." Thanks. But how do you know what belongs to Jenna and what's mine?" "It's easy. If it's girly stuff, I'm selling it because it's probably hers. If it looks classy, I'm selling it too because it probably isn't yours, considering your questionable taste, especially in women." I nodded in agreement, acknowledging his valid points. There was no use in trying to stop him. Although I felt a twinge of guilt about selling some items, especially family trinkets Jenna had cherished, I dismissed those feelings when John handed me some printed papers. "Jenna really made a foolish mistake. She should have logged out of her Gmail on your home computer before leaving, but luckily for us, she didn't. She's been involved with a guy named Tim from work, sharing intimate photos with him. Honestly, you should have been more cautious before marrying someone with a butterfly tramp stamp above her ass." Examining the evidence he provided, I was amazed at how easily he discovered her infidelity. "I had no idea," I admitted lamely. "Yes, no surprise, idiot. You trusted her, but that's in the past. It's time to move on." I shrugged and negotiated with a woman over the price of Jenna's wedding dress. She was thrilled when I counter-offered, reducing the original price from $500 to $20. It may have been unwise to reveal my satisfaction, but I looked forward to telling her one day that it sold for $20 as a satisfying gesture. While the sale continued successfully, I texted a friend who works as a family practice attorney, a soul seller. He responded, asking me to come to his office to review the offer and sign some documents. I returned in the middle of the afternoon, and almost everything was gone. The house appeared nearly empty, with only the essential items for survival. John was completing the packing of a large box labeled "Jenna's Stuff" on the sides. John greeted me with a smile. "How did it go with the lawyer?" "Fine, no issues. The agreement is fair, so I've signed it. I won't fare any better in court." "When did your sale conclude?" "About an hour ago. I had to run out to get some supplies, but I'm finished now. This is all that remains of her belongings." He handed me an envelope saying, "That's her share of the sale, which came to $214 or $6. Ensure she receives her half. We should probably drop off her belongings at her parents' house so she has no reason to return here." "That makes sense. Let's deliver her things and then grab something to eat." Knowing that her wedding dress alone had cost as much as a cheap car, I understood that John might not have secured the best deal possible. Still, I was relieved to have her belongings out of the house so I could begin my new life. I attempted to lift the box, but John beat me to it, insisting that he take care of it. He suggested I drive since I knew the way to Jenna's parents' house. Upon reaching Jenna's parents' residence, Simon, her father, answered the door. We informed him that we were there to drop off Jenna's belongings, and he graciously allowed us inside. Simon tried to express apologies for Jenna's actions, but I interrupted him, asking, "Were you aware she was cheating on me?" He avoided eye contact, confirming my suspicion with a nod. "Thanks for that, Simon. Quite the daughter you raised," I remarked. John placed the box on the table, and I couldn't help but do a double-take when I caught a glimpse of its contents. I was fairly certain that the oversized sex toy with correspondingly large, hairy features, along with explicit material featuring a large black dildo, were recent additions that hadn't been in my home before. I struggled to contain my laughter and simply instructed my soon-to-be ex-father-in-law to inform his daughter that I had signed the papers, and my lawyer would be in touch with hers. I struggled to maintain composure. The absurdly large size of the dildo nearly had me bursting into laughter. I feigned disapproval, shaking my head as we exited, while he attempted to mumble an apology. Once we were back in my truck, I couldn't contain my laughter any longer. "How massive is that dildo? And what else did you include, Mo?" I asked. "It's 12 inches long, 6 inches wide, and I'm not sure about the size of the hairy balls. But they were a nice touch," he replied, wearing a mischievous grin. We had a delightful dinner as he entertained me with his escapades from the past few years. While I had heard some of these stories in previous conversations, hearing them directly from him doubled the hilarity. John's presence made it nearly impossible to be in a bad mood. Dealing with Jenna's negativity before she left only made it easier to move on. Jenny and I were among the few who still had a home phone bundled with the internet for cost efficiency. Upon returning, I checked the messages and discovered an impassioned voicemail from Jenna. Her frantic rant, lasting about 2 minutes, was barely coherent as she yelled about cell phone, huge dildo, hairy balls, father thinking I'm pregnant, and big black dicks. I examined my cell phone, finding no messages from Jenna. Looking up from my phone and catching John's grin, I checked again, realizing that I had blocked Jenna's contact on my cell. I glanced at John and remarked, "You had a busy day today." Surprisingly, I understood most of that rant, but the part about pregnancy is still unclear to me. John fetched a couple of beers from the fridge and handed me one. Taking a sip, he explained, "Apologies with the limited time available. All I could manage was drawing some lines with a marker. Using a fake pregnancy test was risky, as Jenna or her mother might have easily noticed, but I was counting on her father being the first to see it and not noticing the difference. It was a gamble, but it seems to have paid off." As John settled into the guest room, we became roommates, adjusting to civilian and single life, respectively. With the divorce underway, Jenna no longer felt the need to conceal her new boyfriend. Tim, some guy from her workplace, was now in the open. Though I had encountered him at her work functions, I didn't really know him. Later, while grabbing coffee downtown, I stumbled upon a flyer and pocketed it to take home. Upon returning home, I returned John's handiwork, remarking, "Cute." He feigned innocence, saying, "I have no idea what you're talking about," while examining the flyer. It depicted Jenna and her new love, Tim, in a compromising position. Although the explicit details were covered, it was evident what they were up to. The inclusion of both their names and the statement that he was not her husband during the incident heightened the damage. The distribution was centered around the office and extended from there. I inquired about the number he had distributed, and John responded, "A few thousand." "How did you manage to put them all up?" "It was simple. I found a group of teenagers hanging out and paid them $20 each to spread them everywhere. Even if some ended up in the trash, they still got to stir up trouble. And isn't that what being a teenager is all about?" As I played the voicemail on the home phone, Jenna's rant unfolded. "Everywhere, the mall, at work, thinks I'm a slut." It was easy to follow her tirade this time, mainly because I just didn't care anymore. However, when she mentioned homeless guy with a sign, I gave John a questioning look. John handed me a beer and then showed me a video on his phone of a man who appeared homeless, twirling a sign that read, "A cheating slut lives here." Taking a sip of his beer, John remarked, "Juan isn't homeless, he's a new friend of mine from the VFW, and his wife left him while he was in Afghanistan. He was pretty happy to embarrass a cheating slut, even if it wasn't his own." I took a sip of my beer while we observed the video of Juan twirling his sign with joyful enthusiasm. Meanwhile, the divorce proceedings were moving forward, and Jenna's lawyer reached out to mine regarding halting the alleged harassment. My attorney dismissed the claims, stating I had no knowledge of what she was referring to. Furthermore, my lawyer hinted at countering by changing the divorce grounds to adultery if Jenna continued to defame me. Although I contemplated switching the reason from irreconcilable differences, I opted for a quicker resolution without jeopardizing better terms. The threat proved effective, and Jenna backed off. A few days later, another ranting message included phrases like fucking cowbell, assholes, Game of Thrones, High Sparrow, shame. Deciphering the meaning had become part of the entertainment. This time it appeared more straightforward. As usual, John handed me a beer and started the video. So Juan's girlfriend Maria got wind of the situation through Juan. Maria, still harboring resentment from being left by her ex-husband during pregnancy, sought a way to contribute as a form of therapy for herself. The video was amazing. The room echoed with Maria's boisterous voice as she rang her bell. Juan, dressed in tattered clothing, resembled Ricardo Montalban portraying the High Sparrow, observing with a judgmental gaze. Jenna appeared embarrassed, while Tim seemed like he wished he were anywhere else. Taking a sip, I inquired, "Where did this take place?" John chuckled, "Damn Red Lobster." Having another sip, I questioned, "So did anyone end up getting undressed?" Slamming his hand on the table, John exclaimed, "Shit, I knew I forgot something. I suppose we'll have to go witness some exposed breasts to make up for it." "Your reasoning is flawlessly sound, my friend." "Let's go," I responded, grabbing my keys as we made our way to the local gentlemen's club to remedy John's nudity mishap. While observing the captivating dance performance, I inquired about the conclusion. He replied, "I'll let it go when the divorce is finalized. Until then, I couldn't care less." The stunning dancer named Ebony flashed a smile at John as we tucked cash into her thong. Despite claims that there's no intimacy in the champagne room, John insists otherwise. However, his admission came to a halt when two imposing bouncers banned him from the club for a month due to his indiscretions with Ebony. As we exited the club, John confessed, "I think I'm in love." I couldn't fathom how he ended up in her car, especially with his rant about fucking mothballs. After struggling to comprehend his bizarre statements, I eventually gave up. With a sly smile, he shared, "Did you know that red bell peppers start smelling like mothballs if they sit for long? The internet is an incredible source." "I agree," I responded, finishing my beer. "You've been lenient on Tim so far. I don't doubt your wit, just making an observation." "Maybe I have, but he's had to change his cell phone 3 times this month. Apparently he's quite popular on Grindr, Scruff, Jacked, Hornet, and FarmersOnly.com. Farmers only? Don't discriminate. Even gay farmers deserve love." Handing him another beer, I said, "Indeed may they find the love they seek amidst the wheat." A week later, John's uncle, the sheriff, paid us a visit. Since I had a good rapport with his family, I welcomed him inside and offered him a beer. Sipping his drink, the sheriff inquired, "Where can I find my nephew today?" He jetted off to Mexico with his new girlfriend last Friday for the week. "Interesting, so he's not around here?" "No, sir, he's been away for days. What's going on?" Just then, the phone started ringing. The sheriff turned to me, asking, "Are you going to answer that?" "Nope, just preserving the evidence of my ex's unstable mind," I replied, taking another sip as the voicemail began its rant. Lawn problems, work complaints, brown grass, accusing me of being a cheating whore. After swallowing, I remarked, "I assume my wife's workplace has some issues with their lawn." The sheriff commented, "It seems that way." They insisted it was John, but he appears to have a solid alibi. Why don't you give him a call and we can verify his whereabouts and settle this now? I called John, and a familiar voice answered, saying, "Hi, John's occupied at the moment. Can I assist you?" The passionate sounds that followed, like, "Oh, baby, right there, so good," provided a clear idea of John's current activities. The sheriff took it humorously, asking, "Where's John now, sweetheart?" "Oh, damn, he's inside me right now." I couldn't contain my laughter, and neither could the sheriff. Chuckling, he inquired, "Sweetie, are you two in Mexico or still in town?" Even though John had taken the phone, we could still hear the sounds of physical contact. "We're in Cancun, Uncle Sly, just enjoying the local sights. I'll email you my flight details shortly. Whatever it was, probably just some rowdy teenagers. I have to let you go. I'm quite occupied right now. Goodbye." The sheriff returned my phone, finished his beer, and left, laughing to himself, muttering, "In me." The divorce's end date had arrived. I was a free man. More importantly for Jenna, this marked the conclusion of John's games. It was a delightful Sunday, and we were just about to enjoy the first afternoon game. Taking a seat on the couch, I handed John a beer. "Thanks, pal. I'm grateful for your assistance. It's time for everyone to move forward." "Not quite yet. One more to tackle. We need to finish on a positive note." "Can you top what you've already accomplished?" Placing his hand over his heart, as if offended, he responded, "My dear sir, your lack of faith wounds me deeply." That didn't unsettle me. It was the sinister grin that sent a shiver down my spine. "How bad is this going to get?" Checking his watch, he replied, "You'll find out in just about—" It was like a scene from a movie. At that precise moment, the phone rang. "Now." Some of the screams were audible, "You damn jerks," while others were fragments of words like church, grandmother, midget, Elvis, strap-on, threesome, whole congregation. I glanced at John and exclaimed, "What on earth have you done?" He simply grinned and replied, "Want to see?" while opening a video on his iPad. The footage clearly showed the church where Jenna and I had exchanged vows, making it instantly recognizable. The minister was delivering a sermon when suddenly a man stepped forward. Initially bewildered, the minister listened as the man confessed his sins, standing at the altar and declaring remorse for his wicked ways. It turned out he had been engaging in sinful activities with a woman named Jenna from the congregation and sought redemption for his transgressions. As I tried to process this, I witnessed a peculiar scene. A 4-foot-tall dwarf dressed as Elvis, proclaiming that he had been involved with my now ex-wife. And the situation only became stranger from there. Watching the video with amazement, Elvis approached Jenna, took her hand, and unexpectedly began reminiscing about the moments when Jenna used a strap-on to peg him while Love Me Tender played, with Tim involved. However, he acknowledged the wrongdoing, considering Jenna was still married. Despite not enjoying dressing as Tinkerbell for Tim, Elvis expressed his willingness to do anything for Jenna's love. Now that her divorce was finalized, they could finally be together. Kneeling down, Elvis proposed to Jenna, the ring appearing sizable in his small hands. "Be my full-size Priscilla, Jenna, I love you." Jenna was in shock. Her grandma fainted. Her dad stood up and vomited. Tim made a dash for the door. Her mom was in tears. Complete chaos ensued. I was astonished. I had no idea what to say as I stared at him. He leaned back, grinning. A minute later, the front door opened, and someone entered the kitchen. I heard the fridge being opened. A few seconds later, a 4-foot Elvis impersonator sat beside me on the couch, watching the game. He opened a beer, glanced at me, winked, and said, "Hail to the king, baby." In terms of seeking my own form of retribution, I opted for a more refined approach. Over the past year, I've been romantically involved with Kara, who happens to be Jen's former best friend. Jen had managed to keep this relationship hidden from her circle of friends. Aware of Kara's past experiences with infidelity, as her ex-husband had been involved with someone much older a few years ago, Jen had chosen not to confide in her about us. There's a certain satisfaction in hearing your ex-partner upset when your current girlfriend mentions she can't go out because she's spending the night at her boyfriend's place. To add to the irony, Kara's new best friend, Ebony, will be joining her with her boyfriend, John. Ebony invited Kara to her job as a Foxy fitness instructor, and I make sure to praise Ebony's excellent teaching skills whenever Kara demonstrates what she learned in class. Both John and I have plans to propose tonight. John to Ebony, and myself to Kara. As a final touch to my revenge, I'm considering having a wedding invitation personally delivered to Jen. And conveniently, John knows just the right person, a dwarf, to handle the delivery.
That's the end of the story. Write your opinion in the comments about this story. It will be interesting for us to read it. Also, do not forget to like and subscribe to our channel so as not to miss new, equally interesting and exciting stories. Good luck!